Okay, let's unpack this deep dive into making a vegan diet both nutritious and, importantly, affordable.
Right.
We've got a really diverse stack of sources to work with today.
Yeah.
Everything from a real-world $20 meal prep challenge by Cheap Lazy Vegan.
Yeah, I saw that word.
Insights from recipe creators and big organizations like Veganuary and Viva. Practical advice from people on Reddit sharing, how they eat well on a low income.
The real world stuff.
Exactly. And even findings from a pretty significant study out of Oxford University.
It's a fantastic mix. We get the kind of the big picture research alongside the nitty-gritty lived experience.
Totally. And our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear.
Yeah.
We want to cut through the noise, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and practical tips from all these sources.
Yeah.
And show you exactly how to eat well as a vegan without feeling like you have to spend a fortune. We're really going to tackle this common myth that veganism is inherently expensive.
And here's where it gets really interesting, that common belief you mentioned, that veganism is expensive, maybe even like a luxury.
Right. Our sources immediately just turn that idea on its head.
They really do. That Oxford study you mentioned, they looked at the cost of different sustainable diets compared to typical diets across, 150 countries?
Yeah, huge scope.
And the headline finding for high-income countries, places like the U.S., UK, Canada, Western Europe.
It's pretty remarkable. They found that adopting a vegan diet could actually slash your food bills.
Slash them by how much?
By up to 1/3.
Up to a third. That's not just a small saving. That's potentially hundreds, maybe thousands, saved annually, depending on, your budget.
Precisely. This study identified vegan diets as the most affordable dietary pattern they analyzed. Vegetarian diets came in second.
Wow.
It really challenges that core assumption, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it's not just academic data, is it? Miguel Barclay, the 1 Pound Meals guy?
Oh, yeah. His cookbooks are everywhere.
He totally backs this up. He's costed hundreds of recipes, all different styles, and he consistently finds that vegan and vegetarian meals are significantly cheaper to prepare than meals with meat. So what all these sources seem to converge on is how this is possible.
Right.
It's not about buying fancy substitutes or, expensive pre-made vegan stuff.
Yeah.
The core premise, the key to unlocking these savings, is focusing on affordable whole plant foods. Things like pulses, grains, basic vegetables.
Which is exactly what the practical sources like that Cheap Lazy Vegan Challenge and the Reddit community advice are built on.
Exactly. They show you the real-world application of this principle. So this deep dive is really grounded in that blend of academic backing and shared community wisdom from people actually making it work.
Okay, so let's dive into those budget-friendly foundational ingredients then, the ones that keep coming up across all these sources.
Yeah, think of these as the absolute bedrock staples. They're cheap, they're filling, and they're incredibly versatile building blocks for countless meals.
And the absolute superstars, mentioned by pretty much everyone, are pulses. Beans, lentils, chickpeas.
Oh, definitely. Whether you buy them dried, which is, the cheapest route.
Takes a bit more planning, though.
True, but saves money. Or canned, which is super convenient and, importantly, doesn't lose nutrients, according to the research.
That's good to know.
And they are packed with protein and fiber. That makes them incredibly satiating, keeps you full longer, which is, key on a budget.
You see them used in so many ways. Dried lentils are a favorite because they cook quickly, right?
Yeah.
No soaking needed.
Yeah, red lentils especially. Then you've got black beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, garbanzo beans. The list goes on.
And the versatility is just unmatched.
Totally. Chilies, soups, stews, curries like dal, which Veganuary specifically highlights as a fantastic cheap option.
Oh yeah, dal is great.
Tacos, simple rice and beans, blending them into dips or spreads like hummus.
Making patties or bowls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even just bulking up pasta sauces, they just do so much work for so little cost.
Okay, so right after pulses, grains are the next essential affordable base.
Brown rice, oats, pasta. Most dried varieties are vegan, which is handy.
Yeah, just check the label for eggs sometimes.
Good point. Barley, quinoa, couscous, millet, bulgur, lots of options.
And buying dry goods like rice, oats, and pasta in bulk is a classic cost-saving tip that comes up again and again.
Absolutely. Oats are perfect for cheap, filling breakfasts. Think overnight oats, or even baking into simple oat cakes or cookies like they did in the Cheap Lazy Vegan Challenge.
Right. And rice and pasta are just the ultimate canvases for stretching meals, aren't they?
Definitely. Though one of our health-focused sources did mention that some grains, like amaranth, quinoa, spelt teff,
The ancient grains.
yeah, those and sprouted grain breads offer a bit more protein than standard options. Just something to keep in mind if that's a focus, but the core budget message really centers on basic rice, oats, and pasta.
Gotcha. And let's not forget the humble potato and sweet potato.
Oh, definitely not.
Hmm.
Cheap, incredibly filling starches.
Mm-hmm.
Several sources mention them as key for adding calories and satiety, especially when budgets are really, really tight. The cheap, lazy vegan challenge used sweet potato in their oatcakes and savory patties, I remember.
Okay, rounding out these core staples are soy products.
Yeah.
Tofu and textured vegetable protein, or TVP.
Yeah, sometimes called soy curls.
Right. Tofu is consistently mentioned as budget-friendly and super versatile. You can scramble it, stir-fry it, make patties.
And one interesting trick that came up is freezing tofu. It changes the texture, makes it much firmer, chewier.
Oh, I've heard that. Good for mimicking meat.
Exactly. Great if you want a heartier texture, almost like ground meat, in things like chili or pasta sauce.
Okay, and TVP or soy curls.
Arguably the cheapest of the cheap when it comes to, like, a protein substitute.
Really?
Yeah, you can buy big bags for very little. They're fantastic replacements for ground meat or chicken in tacos, chili, stir-fries, stews. Just like folks on Reddit and other sources suggest, rehydrate them and they soak up flavor.
Okay, so with those foundational ingredients locked in, pulses, grains, potatoes, soy, let's talk about getting those crucial fruits and vegetables into your diet without, blowing the budget.
Right, because you definitely need your veg. This is where smart produce shopping comes in.
First, most classic tip, buy in season.
Always. Produce is simply cheapest and most abundant when it's naturally growing locally or regionally.
Makes sense.
And don't be afraid of markdowns or imperfect produce sections.
The ugly fruit and veg.
Exactly. Supermarkets regularly discount items that are still perfectly fine to eat but maybe don't look picture perfect. That slightly bruised apple or oddly shaped carrot, just as nutritious, costs less.
Good tip. And frozen produce. That's a budget vegan's best friend. to have.
Absolutely. Frozen fruits like berries or vegetables like mixed peas and carrots, edamame, green beans, they're often significantly cheaper than fresh, especially when the fresh version is out of season.
Plus, they retain nutrients because they're flash frozen right after picking.
At peak ripeness, yeah.
Mm.
And they reduce waste because you only take out what you need. Peas in particular were noted as being best bought frozen for value and quality.
Interesting. And for fresh options that are reliably inexpensive.
The sources list basics like kale, carrots, onions, corn, lettuces, broccoli. These simple vegetables can form the base of many affordable meals. Cabbage, too, very cheap and versatile.
Okay, so now, moving beyond just what to buy, let's synthesize the smartest shopping strategies highlighted across the sources.
Yeah, the tips for actually saving money when you're walking the aisles or shopping online.
First up, always compare prices.
Look beyond the big price tag at the unit price or price per weight. Sometimes the larger package isn't actually the most cost-effective per serving.
Good point. And definitely lean into generic or store brands.
Oh, absolutely. For staples like pasta, rice, oats, flour, sugar, nuts, seeds, dried fruit, the generic option is often much cheaper with very little difference in quality, especially for cooking and baking.
Right. Shopping sales and weekly flyers is pretty much non-negotiable on a tight budget, isn't it?
Totally. Plan your meals around what's discounted. And if you have the time and capability, hitting a couple of different stores can net significant savings, though you have to factor in travel costs, too.
True. What about bulk bins?
Bulk bins, where you can find them, are fantastic, especially for things like nuts, seeds, spices, herbs, flour, or grains.
Why is that?
Well, you can buy just the small amount you need for a recipe, maybe for spices you don't use often, or for things you use a lot, you can often get a better price per pound by buying in larger quantities from the bin.
Okay. And wholesale clubs, like Costco.
They can be worth considering, yeah. Particularly for non-perishables, frozen items, nuts, seeds, oils, nut butters, pasta, rice.
But there's a catch, right?
Yeah, the catch is you need to be able to actually use those large quantities before they go bad, or have enough freezer or pantry space. Otherwise, it's false economy.
Makes sense. Don't forget the markdown sections.
Never. Check in the bakery section for day-old bread, areas with close-dated items, or even discounted specialty vegan products. Sometimes you find amazing deals there.
And some sources also mentioned looking at online retailers.
Yeah, for things like supplements or specific pantry staples, especially if you can catch sales events or use subscription discounts, sometimes it works out cheaper.
Okay. And finally, stocking up.
Classic move. Stocking up on long-dated, shelf-stable staples when they go on sale. Things like plant milk cartons, canned goods, dried beans, grains. They'll last ages, so buying extra when they're cheap locks in those savings.
So all those tips help you buy smart. But the sources really emphasize that the real key to saving money as a vegan, maybe even more than anything else,
Is preparing your own food.
exactly, rather than relying on pre-made or convenience items.
Absolutely. And the strategy that comes up again and again is batch cooking and freezing.
Tell us more.
Cook large quantities of your basic staples, your grains, your beans, your lentils, or even full meals like chili, stews, lentil bolognese. Portion them out and freeze them. It means you always have a cheap, healthy meal ready to go in minutes. Saves you from ordering takeout when you're tired.
Smart. Even freezing bread or wraps prevents waste if you don't use them quickly enough.
Totally. And the sources give a ton of ideas for simple, versatile meal categories that lend themselves perfectly to this budget-friendly approach using those staples we talked about.
Like what?
Stir fries, pasta dishes, hearty soups and stews, chilies, tacos, burritos, grain bowls, often called Buddha bowls.
Right. Just throw everything together.
Oh, yeah. Baked potatoes with various toppings, simple oatmeal sandwiches. They're flexible and forgiving, you know? Use what you have.
And we got some great specific recipe inspiration directly from the sources, didn't we?
We did. The Cheap Lazy Vegan Challenge, for example, was amazing. They actually spent, 26.59 Canadian dollars
Wow.
for a week's worth of groceries and made it work for 7 days of meals.
That's incredible. They strategically focused heavily on starches and pulses, just like we discussed.
Yeah, and they were also really honest about the challenge. They noted they probably didn't get quite enough vegetables to make it perfectly balanced.
Which is a realistic trade-off sometimes, right? On a super tight budget.
Exactly. It highlights that getting that perfect balance requires conscious effort and maybe a slightly bigger budget sometimes.
But they got super creative. What did they make?
They made bean and lentil balls or patties, a dead simple peanut butter stir-fry sauce using just peanut butter, soy sauce, and tomato sauce.
Simple but effective.
Totally. For breakfast, they used sweet potato and oat cakes, made peanut butter banana oat cookies, and relied on overnight oats. They even shared a tip to prep the dry mix ahead.
Smart. And the Veganuary budget plan also had specific ideas.
Yeah, they offered low-cost per-serving recipes, stressing they were tasty, no-fuss, easy.
Sounds good.
We saw things like one-pot spaghetti, simple dal and rice. There's dal again, banana raisin walnut loaf, jerk cauliflower wraps, pita bread pizzas, curried chickpea sandwiches, even British-style sausage rolls using affordable ingredients.
Nice variety. And digging into the Reddit community posts.
That was fascinating because you saw the collective wisdom, people sharing successful cheap meals like lentil shepherd's pie,
Classic comfort food.
tacos with super cheap TVP or bean fillings, Buddha bowls built on grains and legumes, and the ultimate budget classic, rice and beans.
Can't go wrong there.
And a really insightful suggestion from that community was to look at traditional working-class dishes from around the world.
Why is that?
Because they often rely on inexpensive staples like beans, grains, and root vegetables rather than costly meat. Lots of accidentally vegan or easily adaptable recipes there.
That's a great point. So to make these simple, budget-friendly meals taste great, spices.
Investing in a variety of spices was mentioned as a key tip. You can add incredible flavor for very little cost per serving. And using affordable flavor bases like soy sauce, tomato paste, nutritional yeast, or peanut butter is also crucial.
Okay. One final point related to meals. The trade-off with store-bought vegan substitutes.
Right. The faux meats, the cheeses, pre-made sauces, vegan mayo. They can be pricey.
Yeah, they add up quickly.
So the advice is generally to limit these unless they're on a really good sale, or consider making your own versions, like simple veggie burgers from beans or lentils, or a chickpea tuna salad.
Homemade dips and spreads, too.
Exactly. It's also worth remembering that many common items are accidentally vegan and often very inexpensive. Things like pasta, some dried soup mixes, certain bread, even some cake or frosting mixes. Just got to read the ingredients.
Good reminder. Okay, beyond the food itself, our sources also briefly touched on other related costs. Dairy alternatives.
Consensus is clear. Supermarket-owned brand plant milks, especially soy or oat, are typically the cheapest options. Way cheaper than name brands or more specialized milks like almond or cashew usually.
And yogurts.
Soya yogurt tends to be more budget-friendly than coconut or almond-based ones.
Okay. And what about supplements? That's always a question.
The sources are quite reassuring here. A varied diet built on these whole plant foods actually minimizes the need for expensive supplements.
B12 is essential, right?
Absolutely. Vitamin B12 is essential for all vegans, no question. But the good news is it's very inexpensive to buy. A bottle lasts ages.
And vitamin D.
Recommended for many people, especially in winter months, depending on where you live. And again, it's generally quite cheap.
So the advice is basically,
avoid expensive premium or multi-supplements unless a specific deficiency has been identified by a doctor or registered dietitian. Stick to the essentials, like B12 and maybe D.
got it. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, taking all these sources together?
Well, it means that the idea that you have to spend a lot of money to eat a nutritious vegan diet is, well, it's just a myth.
Yeah, our sources, from the Oxford research to the real-world challenges and community tips, consistently show that it can actually be significantly cheaper than many typical diets.
The key isn't buying expensive substitutes. It's building your diet around incredibly affordable staples like grains, pulses, basic vegetables, and fruits.
And coupling that with smart shopping strategies, buying in bulk when it makes sense, hitting sales, looking for markdowns.
And most importantly, preparing your own food. Getting good at batch cooking and using your freezer.
This approach isn't about deprivation at all.
No, it's about creativity, it's about value, and getting the most nutritional bang for your buck from simple, readily available ingredients.
You now have a wealth of knowledge and practical tips, straight from all these diverse sources, to start building your own budget-friendly vegan plan.
This deep dive really underscores that a budget isn't a barrier to eating a healthy, satisfying vegan diet. If anything, it's an invitation.
Yeah.
An invitation to explore the incredible versatility and affordability of the plant kingdom. Perhaps the most surprising fact isn't just how little you can spend, but how much delicious, nutritious, and filling food you can create with just a few simple, inexpensive ingredients. It's quite empowering, really.
It really is, and it raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Given the potential savings confirmed by researchers and the abundance of simple, affordable recipes and strategies shared by everyday vegans, could a focus on budget-friendly veganism actually be the key to making plant-based eating more accessible and widespread for everyone?
That's a great thought.
Something to chew on during your next trip to the grocery store.